What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about the joys of winter and specifically Zelkova serrata, Japanese Greybark Elm. I don't think I've told the story of this tree. This was about 15 years ago. I started a small batch of Japanese Greybark Elm from seed, and this is the only one that I still have from that batch. So it's 15-ish years old. But meanwhile, in the last couple of years, have been starting a lot more of these guys. And so we just listed the bare root clumps of these on Bonsaify.com. You can buy either 5 or 10 or more of them if you're interested in getting started with this but want to skip the first year of growth. So they're going to come in a little clump like this, and basically these are just seedlings that we've been growing in flats. These have already had some of the longer roots trimmed off, and I wrapped them up in preparation just for this demonstration and for taking pictures to put on the website. But basically there hasn't been a whole lot done to these. In fact, there's one cut point here that was used to shorten this, but these are really good for making small clumps and whatnot. And you know, it's kind of like a ball of clay. You can do anything you want with these. So let me just demonstrate a couple of different things that I would potentially try and see what we can do with these little trees. All right, so this is a little clump that one of our growers put together on my kind of instructions, and this was actually put together last winter, and we're going to be listing some of those as well. But there's a few different things. So for the older tree that I had up here, what I did at one point, in order to get the real radial root spread, having all the roots coming out nice and even all in one place, was I cut off the bottom of the seedling back really hard, something like that. And I think it was a little bit bigger than this, but then I drilled a hole into the base of the tree and attached it to a flat piece of wood, like a little piece of plywood basically. And then I took a chopstick, as I'm doing right now with this one, and just kind of gently arranged all the remaining roots to be going basically straight out. Now, this one's a little bit too small for me to use any sort of fastener on, and so there's another technique that I've been using more recently. These are flange washers, which you can pick up usually at home centers. So unlike a regular metal washer that's relatively narrow, these are a lot fatter. The center hole comes in different sizes, which is really useful. So I'm going to grab one that's a little bit smaller here, and I'm going to see if I can get all these little twigs to go through that hole. I could do it the other way, from the bottom up. Let's see if this works. And as you can imagine, with more than 1 or 2 side branches, this is not going to work. Try not to scrape the bark off while you're doing this. Okay. I made a little bit of a scar. All right, so what I've done basically is attach that, like basically have this growing straight through this. And what I would do then is just take that and put it into a container, keeping the washer relatively flat, letting all of the existing roots be below the washer, and then backfilling with soil. And what that's going to do is, it's actually, as this grows out in the coming year, it's going to girdle itself on this washer. In other words, the wood is going to continue to swell, and then it's going to start flaring right above this washer because the new wood that's being laid down on the trunk can't get to the roots that are down here. And that means that it will then issue roots around here, which will then go directly out sideways in a nice plane. That's the idea anyway. So I've tried that on a few of them and no significant results to report quite yet, but it is an established technique if you look through old bonsai magazines, either using washers or a hole drilled in a piece of plywood or anything like that. And so you can give that a try if you really want to go for individual trees. With a clump like this, one of the hardest things to do if you're starting with older trees is to get the bases really close together. So if you get a clump of bare root trees you can really position the trunks right next to each other. And what I actually do if I want to make small clumps like this is I'll just take, as I think I demonstrated over a year ago in one of the first videos that I ever did, I'll just take like a piece of #1 aluminum and wrap it around the trunks of these guys to position them relative to each other, then pot those into the container and let them grow on for a little while before removing that wire. But you don't even need to use the wire if you're just doing something like what I have here in my hand. And so I can just kind of take these guys, nestle them down 3. So I've got 1 bigger one and 2 smaller ones. And because these are just seedlings, I'm not really too concerned about them being perfectly fastened into the container like I would be with a bonsai or something going into a bonsai container. So I'm going to just kind of firm the soil around them. Maybe I'll add a little bit more here. And then these guys will kind of grow together, and it's really fascinating to kind of see how the trees react to being in close proximity to each other. And I would expect, as you see in nature, that this guy, since it's already bigger, will kind of like force these guys to go away from it, and you'll see that natural sort of spreading pattern that you get in a group of trees that's growing in the middle of a field, where the ones on the outside are growing outward, where the ones in the center are going straight up. So really good opportunity to get that kind of thing going. And if you later want to make larger forests out of these, you can make multiple clumps. Some of, you can just do some with 2, you can do some with 3, some with 5, or even 4 or 6. Like, so say you have a clump of 4 like this, and that's going to be part of your forest, and then you're going to add this clump of 3 as the other part of your forest. So use those kinds of things, but you really need to, you can arrange the forest now if you want with really these young trees, or you can set them in those clumps in individual containers, knowing that a year or 2 years from now you're going to come back and arrange those clumps into a larger container, such that you have good starting points for your forest compositions. Most people don't wire Zelkova, but I actually think there's no reason that you can't. And I think the growth habit lends itself so nicely to straight, upright, and forest styles that it's sort of a natural slam dunk. But I did wire a few of these guys in last year's batch. One of the things about wiring them is the wire tends to relatively quickly, as you can imagine with any deciduous tree, leave an impression in the bark. So if you're going to wire them, you should be watching the wire like a hawk. And I mean, that's true of any wiring that is done on elms. But because these guys don't develop any sort of a rough bark later in life, as soon as they're scarred, you're pretty much not going to be able to get rid of it. And even if the trunk grows significantly afterwards, your wire scars are most likely always going to be visible. And so you need to really be vigilant about making sure that you don't allow the wire to either scar the trunk when you're putting the wire on, or to scar the trunk as the tree starts to make wood in the spring. And I would expect that as soon as you get 4 or 5 leaves on a few shoots on this, you would want to be taking the wire off. Now, I haven't seen a lot of Zelkova grown in the semi-cascade style, but I actually think it would be really beautiful to do that. And so this one I've wired as an example here. You can combine some of these techniques, so you could have multiple trunk semi-cascade. That's pretty unusual. Or you can use the washer technique if you want to get started on the roots at the same time. I've left a tail here on the wire. That's actually to help anchor it in the pot. Like, so when I stick that down in there, it'll hold it there without the soil having to maintain it at that angle. If you've played around with Zelkova and want to share your experiences, leave a comment below. Like I said, haven't seen very many of them wired. So if you've wired Zelkovas before and made different styles, share that also. And look forward to seeing some of your guys' compositions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.